What's going on, everybody? I know what you're thinking right now. You're like, Cash, again? Like, you've been live. You were just live for 2 hours. But yes, again, today I'm putting in some work and also like introducing new people to my audience. So without further ado, you guys already know SK. If you don't know SK, this is SK. That's SK right there. And below her and me, her and I, ain't no grammar schmatzies on here. Patriot Dad. He's amazing. He runs a fantastic live on TikTok. The brother's dope. I'm gonna let him go ahead and introduce himself. Go ahead, brother. Tell him a little bit about yourself.
Wow, where to start? So I jumped onto TikTok probably about 2 years ago. And for about a year and a half, I struggled to figure out how to create content that resonated. My passion has been for as long as I can remember, more than 20 years, politics. And I just decided I have a perspective. I figured out how to get videos to move and built a platform on TikTok. So now between two accounts, I think I have close to 400,000 followers between the two accounts.
Wow.
And that's really just since about May of this past year. And I just had a blast with it. It's been so much fun. It allows me to do stuff that I love to do, which is to talk about politics and to create content around economics and political theory. And I've studied. I guess I've studied our political environment for a long time, and it's pretty cool to be able to contribute to it now.
That's amazing. That's amazing. SK, they know you, but still, for the people that don't, as they come in, you might have some new people on here. So go ahead and tell them about yourself, SK.
Yeah, I just started making content on TikTok a couple of months ago because Patriot Dad made me. But I do TikTok lives and TikTok live debates. I've been doing it since I've been hosting my own lives since like maybe April or so. And that's what I like to do. I like to debate politics. I'm really involved in politics locally. And yeah.
Okay, well, you guys that are watching right now, if you could like the video, share the video out for me. I appreciate it. So in the last live that I did, we were talking about problems in the Black community and Black Lives Matter and all of this other stuff. And this is going to be totally different. We're on the other side of things. Now we're talking about the propaganda of Project 2025. I got two experts on here about Project 2025, but I also wanted to share this first just to get the ball rolling. All right. So while I play this, you guys share this video out, like this video.
Project 2025 is a conservative movement to return the government to the people. It's also known by its longer title, which is My Name is Donald Trump, and I Am Going to Change Everything. Trump wants partisan control of the Department of Justice, the FBI, the FCC, and the FTC. He wants to abolish the Department of Education. NIH probably will be eliminated. Medicaid could be severely reduced. Project 2025 might even change the way you flush your toilet if you still have a toilet in 2025. Some legal experts say Project 2025 will undermine the rule of law, civil liberties, and the separation of church and state. Almost all of us stand to be affected negatively. And to better help understand this, let's just jump over to our national map for a moment. Let's take a closer look at the effects of Project 2025. The states I have marked with X, doomed under Project 2025. California is triple doomed, as is so noted. I think Texas and Florida, they really should be okay. They might even flourish under Project 2025 for obvious reasons. Also, I believe that Alaska and Hawaii, our 49th and 50th states, will be spared largely because they are so far away. Anchorage is 4,275 miles from Washington, D.C. Honolulu is 4 miles from Washington, D.C., even though in this map it appears to be just south of Mexico, but, it's way up there. In fact, at this point, I believe these places don't even know what the federal government is doing, largely because in any given week, they're so far away, so they don't give a shit. And frankly, Alaska at this time might even be a Russian asset. By the way, before or after Project 2020, Phoenix will reach 193 degrees this Sunday. It's gonna be a hot one.
All right. With that being said, Patriot Dad, go ahead, man.
What the heck was he even talking about?
Exactly.
So I don't know what hat he was wearing, but can we replace it with a dunce cap? Because that was one of the dumbest things I think I've ever heard.
Yeah, yeah, I
So
agree.
he went through a litany of all of these executive department branches that are going to be in jeopardy. And assuming that that's true, has anybody ever read Article 2, Section 1 of the Constitution before?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very important sentence at the very top of Article 2, Section 1, and I'll read it to you just so that we can all be clear on exactly what that guy is talking about. So Article 2 is the executive branch, for those of you guys who aren't familiar with the Constitution. Section 1 is the president's role. One sentence says, executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. That's it. That is the sentence that established the executive branch in our government.
Okay.
And the point I'm trying to make is, if Donald Trump wanted to come in and eliminate all those departments, he has every right to do so, because the Constitution designates him as the executive. He is the executive branch. He is the supreme authority in the executive branch. Now, it's ridiculous to think that he's going to do that, because Donald Trump had nothing to do with Project 2025, and I think it's pretty clear.
I was just going to say that to you. I was just about to say, everybody already seen what Donald Trump had to say about Project 2025. He basically called him crazy.
Yeah, but I just want to be clear about something, that even if Donald Trump wanted to eliminate every agency in the executive branch, he could, because he's the executive. It's not as though he's just a person that's in the position of an executive. He is the executive branch. And that's a distinction. So he has the authority to make the decisions that he wants to make. Now, the conflict that we see happening in our system of government is between the three branches. You've got the judiciary, the legislative, and the executive branch. So what you see playing out before you right now is a struggle between the legislature and the executive branch. The legislature came in and created these agencies and put them inside the executive branch through different pieces of legislation, right? It wasn't, but the president is the one that has ultimate authority over those things. So despite the fact that that guy has no idea what he's talking about, I just want to lay the groundwork that if Donald Trump wants to come in and he wants to do, for example, Schedule F again, and he wants to eliminate half of the size of the executive branch, he can do it. Because he's the chief executive. He's the executive branch. He can make that determination.
Yeah, I agree. SK, what you got?
Yeah, I agree with Patriot Dad on all of that. And I also don't understand why the people that were always saying they were so in favor of democracy and all these things, and that Trump wants to be a dictator and he's so authoritarian, why he would also be literally shrinking the size of the federal government and giving more control back to the states, which is in turn literally giving the control back to the people.
Yeah. I agree 100%. So let me ask you, where did the propaganda behind Project 2025 originate? Where did it start? How did people start thinking like Trump's going to come in and do all of these things?
So, Cash, have you ever heard of the name Mark Elias?
No.
So Mark Elias is the Democrat Party hatchet man. He's the attorney that has corrupted most of the political process on the Democrat Party side for as far back as Hillary Clinton's campaign. So to give you a little bit of background on who Mark Elias is, you have to also understand the Russian collusion hoax, the Steele dossier, Crossfire Hurricane, and the scam that was ran on the American people, was pushed through the media, was propagated by the Democrat Party, and quite honestly, quite a bit of swampy Republicans, where they launched this hoax on the American people related to Russian collusion. So Mark Elias at the time was the chief counsel for the Hillary Clinton campaign. He also was the lead counsel for a law firm called Perkins Coie. So Perkins Coie is the organization that through the Clinton campaign funded the Steele dossier. So that's Mark Elias. It's a complete hoax. So that's Mark Elias. Mark Elias has been entrenched in Democrat Party swampy politics for a very long time. He's also the the lawyer that worked for the DNC at the time, who went out and changed state election laws all throughout the 2020 election cycle without actually going through the legislature. Mark Elias is the reason why you saw mail-in ballot drop boxes all over battleground states. He's the reason why you were allowed to send people out to pick up thousands of ballots, or, he's the one who created the mail-in ballot scheme that led to the debacle of the 2020 election. He's also the guy that throughout the 2024 election cycle was in all the battleground states, challenging the results, and particularly in Pennsylvania. But I'm not sure of the exact date, but he also created an activist law firm called Democracy Forward, which is just littered with radical left-wing attorneys. And it's interesting because I started to notice this propaganda coming out about Project 2025. I think it was probably sometime around June timeframe is when people started talking about it. And I saw some content creators on TikTok and other platforms that were just saying some incredibly outrageous things. So I decided to go pull up the document and read through it. And what I was hearing people talk about and what I was reading in the actual Project 2025 document didn't line up. Like at one point I saw content from creators saying that Project 2025 was going to legalize slavery again.
Yes, that was the thing. I've seen a couple of those videos and I was shocked. I'm like, yo, this is like the height of ignorance, especially after I looked into it. Because at first, when you see a video, you're like, okay, hold on, what? So I had to take a look. I'm like, ain't no way. So I went and did my little research into it. And it was a way that they twisted what was written to make it seem like they would do away with the 14th Amendment and the 13th Amendment. And I'm like, this is not at all what this is saying. It's not at all. And they're saying, oh, we'll reverse some things that were used in court cases for civil rights. And I'm like, okay, again, you're stupid, but people believe what they want to believe. I guess this is why lives like this are important, to come out and dispel that information and calm people's minds. So go ahead.
Well, and the one thing that struck me is as I was seeing these videos come across my For You page on TikTok, they were being very specific, not only about the accusation, but they included things like page numbers. So I was like, well, that's interesting. I'm going to go look up and read the page number. And in many cases, what was being said in the content and the propaganda and what was on the page, like you said, Cash, didn't line up at all. In fact, in some cases, it just wasn't there. So, I'm a bit of an investigator. I love to research, and I love to use the left's tools to research so that I can prove to them how wrong they are when I find the facts. So I went to Google and I started typing in very specific searches, and I came across a document called The People's Guide to Project 2025. And as I started reading through the document, I was seeing the exact page references that these content creators were using. And in fact, they were using snapshots from the People's Guide of Project 2025. And I'm like, well, that's funny. So of course, I went a little deeper and I found this organization called Democracy Forward, looked at the, all the attorneys that are involved, recognized the names of some of them as radical left wingers. And then I went down to the section that says About Us, and I hit our board of directors. And sure enough, Mark Elias is named as the chair of the board of directors for Democracy Forward. Not only that, but Ron Klain, who was Joe Biden's chief of staff until about a year ago, was also on the board of directors of Democracy Forward. So the reality is that what most people have come to know about Project 2025 is an entire propaganda campaign that was generated by Mark Elias and Ron Klain. It was pushed by the media, and it was all a lie. I mean, there are sections in there that are just wholly made up. You hear things from people saying like Project 2025 is going to propose as a national ban on abortion. That is nowhere in the document at all. They just made it up. Now, don't get me wrong. I've read all of Project 2025, and there's some things in Project 2025 that I agree with.
There's some things that are super off in it.
There are things that are off, but there's some things that I agree with. I mean, I agree.
Of course, and that's what I was telling people. That's what I was telling people too. There are some things in there that sound amazing. Like if they implement them, it would be great for our country. But there are some things in there where I'm like, oh hell no, I can't get behind this. But the more important thing for people to understand is Trump had nothing to do with it, as said from this sister right here.
I have a prepared opening statement that I'll get into in just a second, but Ranking Member Raskin, you reiterated and have created a boogeyman that just isn't there. I did author the EPA chapter on Project 2025, but in the course of that, I did not work with President Trump, with any of the people who work for him directly or his campaign. And it is very misleading to suggest that there's any coordination there, because I can personally tell you it did not happen. And I am not vying for a position in the next administration. I've actually left DC and I've moved to a small town in Mississippi where I interact every day with people who live outside this bubble of gaslighting and misleading. And they actually are dealing with the consequences caused by policy decisions of this administration
like a liar,
that isn't defined by progress, but defined by creating unnecessary hardship. I understand why it's hard to think about the political realm prior to President Trump, but the Heritage Foundation has been very involved in pushing forward conservative policies for quite a while. And the Mandate for Leadership, the latest iteration, it's the 9th edition. This is a project that has been put out every few years since 1981. So it's been around for quite some time, and again, is more committed to representing the position of the broader conservative movement than any one candidate or person. And I understand why there is the creation of this boogeyman, because your leading candidate is one running away from policy actions she has taken that make Americans' lives much more difficult. In fact, Vice President Kamala Harris was recently asked on national television the following question: when it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago? She said a lot of words, but she did not answer the question, because the reality is most Americans are not better off. Most Americans are struggling to deal with expensive gas, expensive electricity, and high-cost goods and groceries that have created financial burdens that Americans have had to deal with throughout the Biden-Harris administration.
So, right on her opening statement, I didn't even talk to Trump. I hadn't said nothing to Trump. We've been around since 1982, which is a fact. People don't know this, but Obama adopted some of the plans from the Heritage Foundation.
Yeah, Obamacare.
Most presidents since 1982 have adopted in some way, shape, or form some of their proposed policy.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, go ahead, SK.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think if I remember correctly, Reagan implemented like 60% of it. The whole reason that they started putting out this mandate for leadership was because of the Carter administration being such a disaster, and the country had to get back on track. And so it was just a group of conservatives that all got together, and then they started pulling in other big conservative groups like Project 2025. I think it's like 125 or more conservative groups that contributed to the entirety of, that 900 and something page document. Like there would be like AFL that helped contribute part of the legal stuff, but it was over 125 groups. So you're talking probably at least hundreds of people, but more like thousands probably of people helped to create this document. And it is part of the reason why the Reagan administration was so successful, because whenever you get a group of people together and experts in their field, you're able to put this policy together and put it all in one place. It's no different than policy that's put out by left-leaning think tanks. The difference is the Heritage Foundation brings all of these different experts in, and instead of just having this one group putting out policy for, say, the EPA, like that lady, they take all of that policy and put it together in one document and just hand it over to every administration, not just conservatives, every administration, and it's been happening since Reagan.
Well, you know what they did? See, this is people didn't even get hip to this. What they did in trying to make this the boogeyman is they tried to appeal to each group of people that they felt was going to vote for them, right? So with the women who love to have abortions as birth control, they told them, hey, they're going to ban abortion. To the LGBTQ community, hey, they're going to take away all of your rights. to the black community, they're going to make you slaves again. It was just every person that they thought was going to vote for them, they told them something scary. And because Project 2025 exists, they tried to throw that onto Trump because Trump's name was used so many times in it. And it's insane that people just didn't look into it. They didn't just look into it and see. Trump ain't never said nothing about no Project 2025. Trump been talking about Agenda 47. Trump's been talking about his plan for America. And now, especially if you look at his cabinet picks, you know for damn sure they're not implementing no Project 2025. That's a given.
Yeah,
and even when there are people that are associated with Project 2025 that are being picked for some sort of a position or are working around or for Donald Trump, that doesn't mean that he's implementing Project 2025. It means that there are thousands of prominent conservatives that worked on this in some way, shape, or form. And it even says at the beginning that just because someone contributed to part of Project 2025 doesn't mean that they agree with the entirety of Project 2025.
Yeah, it's important to note that and SK touched on this, every think tank in America does the exact same thing. If you've ever run for office in this country at a national level, you are going to get think tanks approaching you, handing you these binders of documents and saying, please help us to implement our policies. That's what think tanks exist to do, to write and create policy proposals. The left wing does it, the right wing does it. The Heritage Foundation just happens to be the largest think tank, the largest grassroots funded think tank in the country. It's been around for years. They do some incredible work, some very, very valuable work. Some of their work on economics is amazing. There was a time when I was going through college and getting my degrees in economics and finance that I actually wanted to go work for the Heritage Organization because I loved their approach on economics. But what the Project 2025 was nothing more than a prescription for how to fix a broken country that the Democrats and honestly some swampy Republicans have spent decades destroying. To SK's point, just because somebody was involved in helping to create Project 2025 doesn't mean that they believe in the whole part of it. But one guy in particular, the FCC nominee for chairman that Donald Trump tapped, Brendan Carr, that guy's incredible. But he actually wrote the section on the FCC in Project 2025. And if you go read it, I don't know how anyone can disagree with it. He's talking about entrepreneurialism. He's talking about freedom of speech. He's talking about allowing the First Amendment through big tech. I mean, those are things that anybody who spends any time on the internet should be excited about, having the right to speak freely. I mean, that's a God-given right in this country. So just because he participated in Project 2025 in no way discounts the fact that his perspective is right. And he's the right person for the job that Trump nominated him for.
I like it. All right. So I heard you're pretty knowledgeable about Crossfire Hurricane.
It was a hoax. The whole thing was a hoax. Well, so the thing about Crossfire Hurricane is there are so many moving parts to the hoax that I honestly don't think that there was any one particular ringleader to it all. They just set these things up and then they just let them run. And you got to understand how the symbiotic Democrat Party and radical left and intelligence community.
Well, before you keep going, explain to the people what Crossfire Hurricane was.
Sure. Yeah. So Crossfire Hurricane was the FBI case that was opened on Donald Trump and his orbit that they used as a justification to spy on Trump and his team. So they were already spying on him,
Obama,
for a very long time. And then they decided to use what they found through their spying operations to justify a formal investigation that allowed them to justify the work that they've done. They basically said, okay, we've been doing this work and now we want to give it credibility into the media. It's kind of like Nancy Pelosi's concept of a wrap-up smear, right? You inject things into the media, and by doing that, you give it credibility, regardless of whether it's true or not. It has credibility, and that's exactly what Crossfire Hurricane was designed to do.
Okay. So go ahead, keep going.
So Crossfire Hurricane was the culmination of multiple different spying operations into the Trump orbit. It started with George Papadopoulos. It started with several low low-level Trump campaign operatives, where the intelligence communities under John Brennan and James Clapper and those guys were using what's called a push-pull operation. So they were pushing people to make contact with Papadopoulos and with Carter Page and other people. And then they were using that contact as justification to then extract the fact that they were coordinating with Russians, when none of that was actually happening. But really where it all culminates in was I think it was a late July 2016 White House Oval Office meeting where John Brennan came to Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Susan Rice, James Clapper was in there, Jim Comey was in that meeting, and all of the players, all of the ones that you would expect to be involved in something like this. And I think there may have been some other FBI people in there as well. I'd heard that Strzok and maybe Page were there also. Brennan came to Obama and said, hey, we had just got some information that the Hillary Clinton campaign was planning to accuse Donald Trump of coordinating with the Russians, using the Steele dossier as evidence that there was coordination happening there, that there was collusion happening there, which, by the way, was funded by Mark Elias, Perkins Coie, et cetera, et cetera. And in that meeting, Brennan told Obama that they knew that they were planning to use this, even though there was no validity to it. The Steele dossier was not validated. And at some point in that meeting, they made a decision that they were going to move forward with opening a formal Crossfire Hurricane investigation. So in the White House Oval Office meeting, they had a decision to make. Do we shut this down, which would have been the right thing to do because they knew that there was nothing validated or verified in the Steele dossier? Or do we allow this hoax to continue and use it to further spy on the Trump campaign? And a decision was made to do that. So within a few days, Crossfire Hurricane was opened. The formal FBI investigations began. They started getting FISA warrants to go out and formally spy on Trump campaign associates. And that's what we dealt with all throughout the first Trump administration, all because of that meeting in the Obama White House, where Joe Biden, Obama, Clapper, Brennan, Susan Rice were in that meeting, and they made a conscious decision that they were going to conduct the biggest hoax, the propaganda hoax on the American people, because they needed to understand what Trump was getting ready to do.
So I want to hear Kash Patel.
What do you think Crossfire Hurricane, based on everything that you've gleaned, that you can talk about?
By the way, everybody, I know you can't see Patriot Dad right now. He's not on screen, right? He is on screen, but he's not. But I have to have this up for copyright purposes, even though this is for educational purposes. Sometimes YouTube gets a little tricky.
What do you think it was all about?
I think it started out as someone trying to look into whether or not there was any foul play, which I think at the premise of it is what the FBI is supposed to do and the IC is supposed to do. So I think it's an original origin. That's probably where it started. I think where it metastasized to was based very quickly by a select few people was, this is the vehicle by which we're going to target a presidential campaign, and we're going to allow the other campaign to fund the information we'd inject into the intelligence community and into the FISA court so that we can surveil someone on that other campaign and maybe get information to dirty them up or take them down. And I think that's just crosses so many lines of wrong and illegal behavior that I'm not sure how we ever let it get that far.
From what you know, how many people were actually surveilled?
At least 6 that I know of. And I think it was recently disclosed that, like, and when you mean surveil, you know, that's all different types of surveillance. But if we use that term generally.
All right. So with that, right, with what he just said, can you understand why they are freaking out at this man becoming FBI director?
Yep.
He knows who did what, and he ain't even the FBI director. Once he gets in there, he's going to know everything, and then they know that he's probably going to come after them.
He already knows almost everything. He was the chief of staff for Christopher Miller, who was the SecDef, acting SecDef on January 6th. And he, as a matter of fact, there's a Fox interview with Christopher Miller and Kash Patel after January 6th, where both of them say that Donald Trump ordered the troops before on January 3rd.
I said
Both
that when
of them
I
said
first
it.
came home from prison. When I was locked
Both
up in DC DOC, I promise, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but when I was in DC DOC, we had the damn letter that was written from the mayor, from Muriel Bowser.
Yep.
We read the letter and we're like, yo, what the hell? It seems like a setup. Why didn't they accept the National Guard? Why didn't they allow the National Guard to be there that day? Because Trump approved it. They 2 weeks prior to January 6th, they said, oh, never mind, we don't need it. Trump approved it way before then. Way before then, he told them, go ahead, you can use the National Guard. And they decided not to use them for whatever reason, which I personally, I believe it was so it could be a setup for what happened on January 6th. Go ahead. I'm sorry, SK.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, and Trump appointed him to be his, Kash Patel is one of Trump's PRA representatives for Operation Crossfire Hurricane, because this goes so deep. I don't think people understand the level of corruption in our government.
Yep.
So with Operation Crossfire Hurricane, when Trump was about to leave office, he declassified Operation Crossfire Hurricane on January 19th, 2021. And so he was on his way out the door and he was like, you know what? I'm on my way out the door. I'm going to release all of this information to the American people so they know how corrupt this government is, and the FBI and all of these people. And he declassified it. It was redacted. Then he handed it over to John Solomon, who's the guy that has the Just the News website.
Yeah.
And John Solomon took it to Georgetown and started making copies of Operation Crossfire Hurricane. And then while he was in the middle of making copies of it, and it's like 2,700 plus pages, it's a giant binder full of information. And when he was in the middle of making copies of it, Bill Barr called him and said, hey, we need you to bring that back to the White House. There's more redactions that need to be made. And he put it in Whole Foods bags and took it back to the White House, and Mark Meadows took it over to the DOJ so that they could do the redactions that needed to be made for the safety of the FBI. And then whenever they went to try to get it back, the DOJ said, you can't have it back. It's agency property now. And so Kash Patel has been suing the DOJ. He's been suing the government since shortly after Trump left office, because he's Trump's PRA representative and they won't give him Operation Crossfire Hurricane. That binder of information is also why they raided Mar-a-Lago.
Well, it goes back further than that. So Kash Patel was the lead investigator working directly with Devin Nunes when he was the chair of, I think it was the, I can't remember which committee he was the chair of, but in 2018, they released something called the Nunes Memo. And the Nunes Memo essentially challenged the official narrative about Crossfire Hurricane. So Kash Patel was the lead investigator, was looking at the FISA warrants, was looking at the interviews, the 302s, and all of the FBI documentation going all the way back to 2017 and 2018, and was intimately involved in debunking the narrative that the media was pushing. So Kash Patel knows where all of it is. He knows every player. He knows all of the involvement of the Five Eyes nations, how Britain was involved, and Russia, or excuse me, Australia was involved, and Alexander Downer, and all of these players that came in across multiple different intelligence community assets. They were all working together to create this hoax, this push and pull method. And Kash Patel knows where all he knows the details. He knows all the players, and that's why they're terrified of Kash Patel. They are absolutely petrified that he's going to come in and he's going to expose it all, because he will. I mean, that's just the type of guy he is.
Good. That's what we need. That's exactly what we need. Straight up.
Yeah,
I don't know,
it's going to be good.
For me, I can't understand for the life of me, right, how people can hear all of this stuff that the other side was doing, all right, illegally. It's not legal, the things that they was doing, yet they were persecuting somebody who they claim was doing illegal stuff. And then all these little peons out here just cheering it on. Like, yeah, go get them. Doesn't matter if it's not true. Doesn't matter if it came out to be a hoax, half of the stuff that 90% of what they said about the man. I say even damn near 100% is false, and they cheered it on, knowing it's illegal. If they can do that to a president, don't you think that they can do that to you? And you're cheering them on because you're cheering these people on, and they're doing this to this man because you bought into the narrative that they presented you about him, even though he was one of the greatest presidents of all time in our modern day history, especially in modern history. He's the greatest president that we've ever had. And now he's back in office, and people are freaking out. Well, they're freaking out. Then you got these liberal women that are shaving their heads and then divorcing their husbands and all of it, all because of propaganda. You're doing all this because you drank the Kool-Aid, and you're cheering for the bad thing, thinking that you're going against a bad man who is actually the man that's going to make this country great again.
Yeah, I mean, look, propaganda is powerful. It is incredibly powerful at shaping the minds of people who are maybe even just innocently too busy to do the research on their own. So as I've been watching the development of the propaganda machine in our own media and through social media influencers, I started to see a lot of correlations. So one of my hobbies and things I'm passionate about is understanding economic history. I love the evolution of economic theory. So I've spent a lot of time understanding authoritarianism and totalitarian societies. And I wanted to learn, how did we get from like World War I to World War II, where, you know, fascist regimes are stood up and communist regimes. And I noticed something very similar about what we're experiencing today. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it on this platform, but I'm going to say it. So Adolf Hitler was one of the reasons why he was so successful at literally stealing the minds of the people in Germany, was because he used this concept of sending the youth out to propagandize their families. And you've heard a lot about the Nazi youth. You've heard a lot about how they brought kids in and they removed Boy Scouts, and they replaced the concept of Boy Scouts with the Nazi youth programs. But the purpose of the Nazi youth program was not just to raise up and develop good Nazis, but it was to propagandize families. It was to take what the government was telling the kids, and that was to go back into the households and to brainwash the parents. And if you look at the strategy the Democrat Party has used throughout this election cycle,
what they're doing right now,
they're not
right
using
the school system. They're doing all of that, and kids is going home asking their parents about their pronouns.
They're doing it in the school system, but they're doing it on social media. Who are some of the biggest voices you hear on the left today? They're 20-year-old kids, Harry Simpson, Chris Mowry. Yeah. They're using kids to create propaganda, just like the Nazis did back in the 1930s and 1940s. It is a very intentional strategy so they call us fascists. Well, they are actually doing the work that fascists did during World War II.
Yeah, but see, that's the scary part about everything. People don't get their information from books anymore. They don't get it from credible authors. They get it from what they feel is a credible source of information from the internet, which today we call influencers. And most of the influencers that you hear on social media are paid. They're paid to say the things that they say. They literally have a memo of Kamala Harris her campaign actively reaching out to influencers, trying to offer them $10,000 to promote her, not knowing anything about her. What's his name? Kai Cenetta. Kai Cenetta is a Twitch dude. He does some pretty funny content, and that's his thing. And when she reached out to him, he's like, nah, I ain't into none of that. And he exposed her. And it's like, what if he would have went for it? What if he's got a huge following, massive following, more streamers on Twitch live than any person. I think he broke the record. He owes the record for it. And these are all children. So when you talk about what the Nazi Party did with the incentivizing or indoctrinating the youth and sending them home to carry that message and indoctrinate the families, that's what we're seeing happen in real time. We're seeing it with our schools. We're seeing it in some churches, which is crazy to me. I can't understand how a pastor could get up on the pulpit and say the things that I heard some pastors saying. Matter of fact, wearing rainbow cloths. You got Catholic priests wearing rainbow cloths with rainbow crosses. And it blows my mind to see how they've adopted what the Nazis actually did and pushed it to the extreme. I'm talking school, church, internet, movies. You can't even watch a damn Disney movie no more. You can't. You got to be careful. Before you let your kids watch a movie, you have to watch it. You had to be like, okay, is this suitable for my kid? I watched Thor: Love and Thunder, and it broke my heart. I was so upset because I loved the Thor series. I loved it. And it's just like, well, why you got to make a gay rock guy? Why did he have to be a rock being that likes another rock being that happens to probably have a, you know, he got a Johnson. You know what I'm saying? It didn't make sense to me. Why are you putting this in the movie?
Well, I'll tell you why.
The indoctrination.
It's so you can ask Joseph Stalin why. So what happened after World War II you ever heard the saying, to the victors go the spoils?
Yeah.
So in Europe, prior to World War I and World War II, the struggle in Europe over political control was between socialist ideologies. It was between the socialists, the communists, and the fascists. They were all at heart authoritarians, but they had very different perspectives of the best way to go at it. And fascists are basically socialists and communists all wrapped up into one. They just do it a little bit differently, so I guess is the point. So following World War II, when Russia contributed to defeating fascist Italy and fascist Germany, socialist Germany, really, they got to be the ones that decided what the history books would write about other versions of authoritarianism. And then they turned their focus from Europe to the West. And they started injecting Marxism into our academic settings through our universities. But they knew that they would never be able to break the American spirit through economic Marxism, because we had a growing, very successful middle class, and you just can't convince people that are doing well in life that they're not. So they decided to change tactics from economic Marxism to cultural Marxism.
We're seeing that right now, heavy.
Instead of dividing people by income status, they divide them by race, by gender, by ideology, by identity. So what we're seeing today right now is 70 years, maybe more, 70, 80 years worth of cultural Marxism that was deployed intentionally by Joseph Stalin and the communists into our academic settings, and it's been allowed to metastasize for nearly a century, and you're watching it play out right before your eyes.
100%. To answer your question about the Catholic priest, it's a whole bunch of different. Well, I've seen a couple different videos of churches that are established with Catholic priests that are promoting this. I'm gonna pull it up right now. Go ahead, you guys can keep going.
Yeah, SK, you got anything to add? I mean, it's crazy what we're watching. Everything that you're seeing right now is an acceleration of plans that have been in place for decades. And it's only going to accelerate faster unless we put a stop to it. That's why it's important to have an administration come in that is radically going to transform the way our government is managed. Because if the government gets out of the business of dividing people by gender and by race and by ideology and by identity, then honestly, people are going to walk away from it because they're bored. I mean, honestly, what section of the country honestly cares about most of what the radical left cares about? Very few, not very many at all.
Yeah.
But yet, because it's injected through DEI programs and through CRT programs, and it's required reading in elementary schools and high schools, that you can't get away from it. So we've got to force that stuff out of sanctioned government entities and let people decide how they want to live their lives.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So yeah, that was just a couple photos. There's a ton. There's videos of them giving a sermon, okay, with the rainbow shawl. And the sermon was insane. I'm like, well, how can you preach this? Like, I don't get it. And this is not me taking shots at the LGBTQ community. Let me make that very clear. This is America, regardless of what I feel religiously. This is America, and you got the right and freedom to do what you do. I'm not trying to take that from anybody, and I'm not disrespecting you. I'm not trying to anyway. My religious views are my religious views. But the reason why I'm speaking about it is because of my religious views, and this happens to deal with religion. Okay, you cannot have a supposed Christian pastor or Christian or Catholic priest. Well, I don't know. Maybe you can have a Catholic priesthood. I don't know a lot about the Catholic religion as far as what you can and cannot do. But as a believer, you know, I know what it says in the Bible. So how can you sit up here, and this is not trying to be offensive, But in the Bible, it says that a man laying with another man is an abomination. That's what it says in the Bible, according to the Bible. So how can you officiate a marriage between two men in your church if that is in your scripture? That's the thing. And again, let me reiterate, not trying to offend nobody. If you happen to be a part of that community, hey, that's between you and God. I'm not here to judge you. That's not my place. That's for God to do. All I'm saying is we talking about the religion. I pulled that up and show you guys. And that's just the Catholic side. When you look at the Christian church, it's far worse. It is far worse than the Catholic church. I'm talking about you got a pastor up there in a straight up pink suit and he's flamboyant as all out and got a husband. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, I just don't understand it. I don't understand it.
Well, you're not meant to understand it. You're supposed to accept it. That's the whole point of the agenda that they're driving.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
You got the right one right here. You got the right one. I'll call it out. So even beyond all of that, you know, when we look at all the things that they're trying to do, man, they're trying to keep people divided, you know, as an American. I'm talking about as Americans. They're trying to make it to where the LGBTQ community feels ostracized by patriots to the point that they don't want to be called patriots. And I know people that are gay that are patriots. Now, me talking about my faith and me talking about an American is completely different. I know a bunch of patriots that are gay. I know a bunch of patriots that are married to, you know, another man or another woman that are gay. And nobody can't take that away from them because the definition of a patriot is somebody that loves their country and will do anything for their country. So gay people can be patriots. Black people can be patriots. White people can be patriots. It doesn't matter about any of that. A Christian can be a patriot. A Muslim can be a patriot. A Hindu can be a patriot. I want people to understand that. But what they've done is tried to make it to where when you hear the word patriot, you think racist. That's what they've tried to do. When you hear the word patriot, that means they're homophobic. When you hear the word patriot, that means they don't like Muslims. And that's not the case. It's never been the case. But this is what they've tried to do to make you hate your country. This is what they've tried to do to make you think that America is just the most horrible place in the world, even though you have rights and freedoms here that you would not have anywhere else. You couldn't live the way that you live here. You couldn't be a gay patriot in Saudi Arabia. You couldn't be a Christian patriot in, you know, whatever Muslim country where there's Sharia law. You couldn't be a white person walking around in Sudan as a patriot. You got rights and privilege here that you do not have anywhere else. So love your country. That's all I'm saying. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. Spot on. But think about it from their perspective. They don't have an economy that's successful they can run on. The candidate had a brain full of oatmeal. He could barely even say his own name. He could barely string two sentences together without sounding like he had a bag of marbles in his mouth. The backup candidate was probably the worst political candidate in American history. She was awful. She was the worst candidate in American history. She was worse than Joe Biden was. The only thing that they had left was to try to divide and destroy and to separate and to propagandize. And what's great about this country is that even though Americans are busy and propaganda is really powerful, they lost. And they lost because people inherently are not dumb. The American people are not stupid like they think we are. We can look at the economy and feel that it's not working and understand that raising or spending trillions of dollars over a short period of time in an economy that's already hot is going to cause inflation. People know that. When you increase the M2 money supply by 50% in a year and a half, it's going to cause inflation, and people know that.
Yeah.
When you have dumb policies being proposed by Kamala and Joe can barely stand up straight, they didn't have a choice. They had to do something, and division and hate and fear were their prescription. And the good news is it failed.
Yeah, 100%, man. Thank God for that. Thank God it failed. And I told everybody we was gonna win this one. I told everybody. They didn't think I was on election night when we hosted the election. Let me tell you, bro, I was the only one that was like, we got this in the bag. It's gonna be a landslide. We're gonna sweep. It's all good. A couple times they had me a little shaken up, but then I stuck to my guns. I'm like, nah, we got this in the bag. Watch, you'll see. And then sure enough, we do. And since we won, we don't have to be so hateful towards the other side no more, man. We don't have to. They lost. What they wanted is not going to happen. That is for sure, because we have a president that actually cares about this country and will never let us fall into socialism, communism, Marxism, any of those things at all. So we don't have to be so hard on them. All right. If you could soften up a little bit when you talk to a moderate Democrat or a moderate, real classical liberal, it's the leftists. And I'm not going to tell you to soften up on them. The leftists are the problem in this country, not the regular liberals, not the regular Democrats. It's leftists. With most leftists are, most Democrats, it seems, that are in the government have adopted this leftist ideology. So I'm never going to tell you to soften up on the politicians, but on the people that admire some of these people and have adopted some of their philosophies, just be a little easier on them, because they don't know. The information that they've taken in has muddied up their mind. So it's on us to take the initiative. And I know people are like, why does the conservatives always got to be the ones to be nice? And we don't have to. You don't have to do anything. But if you are a conservative, I believe that means that you believe in God. And then you probably believe in the Bible, so, and I'm guilty of it myself, of going too hard on them sometimes. We have to soften up just a little bit if we're trying to save our country and really bring some community and some togetherness into this thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's my advice. What you got for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what SK and I have been trying to do, along with some others. Right after the election, I put a video out on TikTok, basically asking for people who are struggling with fear, because let's be honest, I mean, propaganda is powerful. It's designed to create fear. Fear elicits a reaction. It elicits a response. But there are a lot of people out there who honestly believe that the next 4 years are going to be the worst 4 years of their life, because they believe the lies that they've been told. And we have been actively trying to open up opportunities to sit down and have adult conversations with people who are struggling with what the next 4 years are going to look like. I want to talk. I want to understand what lie do you think was the biggest lie that you believe, that we can talk through, and we can help you see that it was based on propaganda. I mean, I think most of us are well equipped enough, because we're well researched enough, that we can talk intelligently about the things that people are scared about and help them to understand that there's no reason to be afraid. You don't need to be afraid of the executive branch being cut in half. You should be excited about it. You don't need to be afraid about tariffs, because they're actually going to create an environment where the president can pass legislation to give you more of your money back. You don't need to be afraid about free speech. You don't need to be scared of that kind of stuff. You should be excited about that, so that you can share your opinion. You can use your voice. You can vote with your money. You can do the things that the American citizen have literally ingrained into our DNA. You don't have to be afraid of that type of stuff, but it's going to require a little bit of effort on their side as well, to be willing to sit down and say, yeah, I'm ready to talk. It's going to take time. Yeah. They're going through grief. The stages of grief are still working out, but it's going to it's going to be a process.
Ain't that the truth? Got a super chat here. I appreciate that, Ashley. Ashley says, I agree 100% with the hands up, praise the Lord, and a cross to represent. I love that. Thank you. I appreciate you for the super chat. And yeah, you're right. I agree. That's what we got to do, man. That's what we got to do. And it's hard work, because I ain't gonna lie, I love making my content. I'm going to keep making my content, and I'm only going to do it because I feel comedy is the best form of communication with people. Because even if they don't, even if they disagree with what I'm saying, you can't help but laugh. Like when I do my Trump's Black Press Secretary skits, you can't help but laugh. It's obviously it's crazy, the stuff that I'm saying. But it's funny, because that's been what the reality has been. The stupid questions get asked and nobody opens up and says the real thing. So that's what I try to do with those skits, man. And I hope that if you're a liberal and you watch it, I hope that you get a laugh from it. And like my man's Patriot Dad said, if you are fearful, say you a liberal and you like, yo, man, I'm terrified. I'm one of them women that shaved my head because I think that things are going to go bad and I'm going to lose my hair from stress anyway. Come over to his live. It's Patriot Dad EV on TikTok, correct? Patriot Dad EV on TikTok. You guys go and give him a follow, man. Go and check him out if you're on TikTok. Are you anywhere else, bro?
I'm over on X. I know SK and I are trying to grow on X. It's a very different world over there, but we're working on it. So it's the same screen name, at Patriot Dad EV 2.0, but my handle there is at Patriot Dad EV 77.
Okay.
Now be careful, because I feel like if you haven't had this experience in content creation of people impersonating you, then you haven't quite made it yet, I guess. So there's a bunch of fake accounts out there that you just got to kind of wade through.
Yeah, no, what I gotta share it. I gotta put SK's YouTube up on my thing anyway, but send me your handle for your X and I'll share it out on my X and let people know to go and follow you there. Everybody that's watching on X right now, I appreciate you. If you could please go follow him and also follow SK Double Dub. SK, talk to him.
I hope my internet's working okay. It's
You're
kind of
good.
been in and out. Okay, good. Yeah, I agree with everything Patriot Dad said. We hosted a live on election night, and like he said, we kept asking, people. That's what I did after I stayed live for a really long time. I stayed up all night, and I had liberal after liberal come up on the panel just for me to ask them what they were afraid of, and how it is that I could try to help, dispel any of the rumors and propaganda that they had believed and the things that people are afraid of. It's pretty wild. I mean, this is the first time that I've been as hopeful about the future of our country. I mean, I'm so hopeful about the future of our country. We just avoided becoming like the UK and a lot of different places in Europe. I mean, people being arrested for social media posts is crazy. And that's where we were headed. I mean, they were campaigning. They were saying it out loud. They weren't even hiding it. And I just think that the future is very bright. I think that shrinking the size and the scope of the federal government, getting back to the Constitution is what is important. I want everyone to know that you have the control. Our government is, by the people, for the people. And you guys are the ones that hired the people that work, for the government. You are elected these people. They work for you. You need to remember that you need to call them and you need to email them whenever you want them to do something. And that's what we need to do right now. Everybody needs to be calling and emailing their senators to tell them that they need to confirm Donald Trump's appointments. His appointments are very, very important for what it is that Donald Trump has planned for our country. And none of it is bad. It is all freedom and liberty for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're a part of the LGBTQ community. It doesn't matter. It's about freedom and liberty for everyone. Not a single one of us care what it is that you do in your home on your own time. We don't want the government in our homes either. Nobody does. They need to stay out of everyone's business. It's just, less government control, shrinking the size and the scope of the federal government, and weeding out the corruption. If Trump is able to weed out the corruption, we are going to be so much better off for it.
Amen. Amen. Well, with that, you guys, we got about 2 minutes left. Patriot Dad, go ahead and give him your final thoughts, man.
Look, SK is so spot on. It is absolutely critical right now that we remain engaged in the process. Donald Trump was given a mandate, a huge mandate. He won the White House, he won the Senate, and he kept the House in a massive way. He picked up voter share across every demographic. What's fascinating to me is that the left tried to use a campaign of abortion as a national issue, but Donald Trump actually received more of a share of young women voters than he did in 2016 and 2020. So he gained ground there because the American people know what the truth is. Here's the thing, though. If the swamp is able to get another scalp in terms of Trump's nominees, we've already lost. They're coming after Pete Hegseth. They're coming after Kash Patel. They are going to try to do the Kavanaugh treatment to every nominee that they're most afraid of. And the only thing that stops that is us getting on the phone, sending emails, just forcing our perspective onto our elected representatives. There isn't a single person in Congress on the Republican side or in the Senate on the Republican side that doesn't owe their seat and their very existence in Washington, D.C. to Donald Trump right now. He has a mandate. We need to make sure that we force that mandate through. We can't lose another nominee. Every one of them are absolutely critical to where we're going in the next 4 years. They have to be nominated. They have to be approved. They have to be put in their positions. And the swamp's just going to have to get over it. They're going to have to be okay with it.
I agree. Well, as always, man, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Appreciate you guys being up here on the panel. We got to keep this thing going. And if you guys ever want to come on, my platform is your platform. I give my platform to people that have common sense, and that I feel like everybody needs to hear. Patriot Dad, SK, you both are definitely two of those people. So that's why you're here right now, and I appreciate you being up on here. For everybody that's watching at home that liked it and shared this video out, I appreciate you guys as always. Unite, don't fight, be a street light. Only you can be the change you wish to see in the world. And when you get too stressed out, you got to remember to pray, America, because without God, everything falls apart. And that's a fact. And before I go, if you guys haven't already, go over to Give Butter. All right, let's adopt some families this year for Christmas and make sure they got a meal and some presents under the tree. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, let me go ahead and share it for you. It's Christmas time once again. A time of decorating trees, families coming together for a dinner that you are sure to remember. And what's Christmas without presents? All the presents underneath the Christmas tree. What should be a time of cheer, for some families is stress. That's where you come in. Christmas is about giving, but why? The Bible tells us in John 3:16 that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever should believe in him should not perish but have everlasting life. So this is why we give gifts. Unfortunately, some families ain't going to be able to give no gifts this year. You can help with that. Click this link down here if you're able, and you could donate. Help make Christmas good this year for some kids that ain't going to have such a good Christmas. It's the street light thing to do. So give back. Remember, unite, don't fight, be a street light, because only you could be the change you wish to see in the world. And when you get too stressed out, you got to remember to pray, America, because without God, everything falls apart. That's a fact.